The day my father was buried, my older brother grabbed my arm in front of everyone and whispered, "You're not family anymore. Leave before you embarrass yourself." My mother stood beside him. She didn't defend me. She simply looked away. 5 minutes later, they locked the front door of the house where I had grown up. I stood outside with one small suitcase, while they celebrated inside, believing they had inherited everything my father had spent 40 years building. They laughed. They divided the company. They even argued over Dad's watch. But none of them noticed one thing. Dad's lawyer hadn't arrived yet. And when he finally walked through the front gate, he didn't ask for my brother. He didn't ask for my mother. He looked straight at me and said, "Miss Claire Bennett, your father left very specific instructions. You need to come with me immediately." That single sentence changed everything. Welcome back to Betrayal Stories. If you enjoy emotional family dramas, shocking betrayals, and unforgettable revenge stories where the truth always wins, you're in the right place. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, what would you do if your own family threw you out after your father's funeral? And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Betrayal Stories and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Now, let me tell you what really happened. My name is Claire Bennett, and until I was 31 years old, I believed family was something that stayed with you forever. I was wrong. Sometimes the people who share your last name become strangers long before they admit it. Looking back now, I should have seen the warning signs years earlier. But when betrayal comes from people you love, you spend far too much time making excuses for them. My father, Thomas Bennett, owned a manufacturing company that produced industrial farming equipment across 3 states. It wasn't a billion-dollar corporation, but it employed nearly 400 people. To the workers, my father wasn't just the owner. He knew every mechanic by name. He attended weddings. He visited employees in hospitals. Every Christmas, he personally handed out bonuses instead of letting the accounting department mail checks. People respected him because he earned it. At home, things were very different. My older brother, Ethan, believed the company already belonged to him. He had worked there since college. At least, that's what everyone thought. The truth was he spent most days sitting in his office pretending to be busy, while other people fixed his mistakes. Whenever a project succeeded, Ethan accepted the praise. Whenever something failed, someone else took the blame. Usually me. I wasn't officially part of the company. After earning my degree in finance, I accepted a position at another firm across town. Dad had offered me a job many times. I always refused. I wanted people to know anything I achieved came from my own work, not from being the owner's daughter. Dad respected that. Ethan hated it. He often joked, "Claire thinks she's too good for the family business." I never argued. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Our mother, Linda, adored Ethan. She always had. If Ethan forgot her birthday, she laughed it off. If I arrived 5 minutes late for dinner, she called me disrespectful. As children, I assumed that was normal. As adults, it became impossible to ignore. Dad noticed it too. He just rarely confronted her. He believed keeping the family together mattered more than winning arguments. Despite everything, Dad and I stayed close. Every Sunday morning, we met at a small diner on the edge of town. No assistants. No business calls. Just coffee, pancakes, and conversation. Those breakfasts became our tradition. Some weeks we talked about work. Other weeks we barely spoke at all. Dad would simply watch people walking past the windows and smile. He used to say, "Success isn't measured by what you own, Claire. It's measured by who's still sitting beside you when life gets hard." I never forgot those words. About a year before he died, those Sunday breakfasts changed. Dad seemed tired. He laughed less. Sometimes he stopped talking halfway through a sentence and stared into space. When I asked if he was all right, he smiled. Just getting older. I wanted to believe him. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Dad's personal assistant. Her voice shook. "Claire, your father collapsed during a board meeting." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. At the hospital, I found Ethan arguing with a nurse because visitors weren't allowed inside intensive care. Mom sat silently in the waiting room, crying into a tissue. A doctor approached us. He suffered a major heart attack. We've stabilized him. But the next 48 hours are critical. Those 2 days felt endless. I barely left the hospital. Dad eventually opened his eyes. Weakly, he smiled when he saw me. He motioned for everyone else to leave the room. Only I stayed. His voice was barely audible. Claire. I leaned closer. You need to promise me something. Anything. He reached for my hand. No matter what happens, don't fight them. I frowned. What do you mean? He closed his eyes for a moment. They're going to make choices after I'm gone. Hurtful choices. But don't fight. I felt tears forming. Dad, please don't talk like that. He squeezed my hand surprisingly tightly. Promise me. Reluctantly. I nodded. I promise. He smiled. Almost peacefully. I knew I could count on you. 3 weeks later, my father passed away quietly in his sleep. And with him, the only person holding our family together disappeared. The funeral took place on a cold Thursday morning. Hundreds of people attended. Employees, neighbors, friends. Even retired workers drove hours to pay their respects. They all had stories about my father, how he had helped them, encouraged them, believed in them. Listening to those stories made me realize something. Many of those people knew my father better than my own family did. After the service, everyone gathered at my parents' house. People shared memories. Some cried. Others hugged. For a little while, it almost felt like we were honoring the man we had lost. Then, everything changed. As the last guests began leaving, Ethan stood in the middle of the living room. He clapped his hands loudly. If you're not immediate family, we're done here. People awkwardly started collecting their coats. Within 15 minutes, the house was nearly empty. Only Mom, Ethan, his wife, and I remained. Ethan walked upstairs. A few moments later, he returned carrying a cardboard box. He placed it on the floor in front of me. Inside were my childhood photo albums, a few books, old clothes I had left behind years ago, and nothing else. I looked at him confused. What is this? He folded his arms. Your things. I laughed nervously. Very funny. He didn't smile. I'm serious. You don't live here. This house belongs to Mom now. You've got everything that belongs to you. I slowly looked toward my mother. She avoided my eyes. Mom, she whispered. It's probably for the best. At that moment, I realized I wasn't losing a house. I was losing my family. I stared at the cardboard box for several seconds. It felt unreal. My father had been buried less than 2 hours earlier, and already my brother was treating me like an unwanted guest. I looked around the living room. Every photograph on the wall held a memory. The staircase still had the scratch Ethan and I made with our toy trucks when we were children. The fireplace still displayed the Christmas stockings Dad insisted we hang every year. This wasn't just a house. It was my entire childhood. And somehow, I no longer belonged there. I swallowed hard. So that's it? I asked quietly. You pack my things into a box and tell me to leave? Ethan shrugged. You moved out years ago. This isn't your home anymore. His wife, Melissa, stood beside him with her arms folded. She didn't say a word, but the satisfied smile on her face said enough. My mother finally looked at me. I think everyone needs some space. Space. That single word hurt more than any insult. Not, we're grieving. Not, let's talk tomorrow. Just, you need to leave. I nodded slowly. I understand. No one tried to stop me. I picked up the box. It wasn't heavy. Most of the important things in my life had never been objects anyway. As I reached the front door, I stopped. For 1 second. I hoped someone would call my name. Maybe Mom would tell me to stay. Maybe Ethan would admit he'd gone too far. Maybe nothing. The silence behind me said everything. I stepped outside. The cold afternoon wind hit my face. I placed the box in the trunk of my old sedan and stood there staring at the house. Curtains moved upstairs. Melissa was already looking out the window, watching to make sure I actually left. I laughed softly to myself. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind people make when reality becomes too painful to process. Dad had warned me, don't fight them. Now I finally understood why. I climbed into my car but couldn't bring myself to drive away. Instead, I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. For the first time since Dad passed, I cried. Not because he was gone, but because the family he spent his whole life protecting had fallen apart before the flowers on his grave had even begun to wilt. Nearly 20 minutes passed. Then I noticed a black sedan pulling slowly into the driveway. It wasn't one of Ethan's friends. It wasn't another relative. The driver stepped out wearing a charcoal gray suit. Even from a distance, I recognized him immediately. Harold Whitmore, Dad's attorney. He had handled our family's legal work for over 25 years. Harold looked toward the house first. Then he noticed me sitting in my car. His expression changed. Instead of walking toward the front door, he walked directly toward me. He knocked gently on my driver's window. I lowered it. Claire. I nodded. Mr. Whitmore. He looked toward the house again before speaking. I've been looking for you. I forced a small smile. You found me. He noticed the cardboard box sitting in the back seat. His eyes narrowed. Have they already? I simply nodded. He sighed deeply. I was afraid of this. I frowned. What do you mean? Instead of answering, he reached into his briefcase and removed a sealed cream-colored envelope. Across the front, in my father's handwriting, were 4 words. For Claire. Only Claire. My heart nearly stopped. I recognized Dad's handwriting instantly. The slightly slanted letters. The careful spacing. He had written this himself. Harold handed it to me carefully. Your father instructed me not to give this to anyone else. He specifically said. Harold paused. That I should wait until after the funeral. My hands trembled. Why? Harold looked toward the house again. Because he believed today's events would unfold exactly as they have. A chill ran down my spine. He knew. Harold nodded. He knew more than anyone realized. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked, should I open it now? He smiled gently. I think your father would want that. I carefully broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. The first line alone made tears fill my eyes. My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, then everything happened exactly as I feared it would. I stopped reading. I couldn't breathe. Dad had predicted this. Every part of it. I continued. First, I need you to know something. Nothing that happened today is your fault. You were never the problem. You were simply surrounded by people who confused kindness with weakness. My vision blurred. I wiped away tears and kept reading. Your brother believes he understands business. Your mother believes she understands loyalty. Unfortunately, both are about to learn difficult lessons. I know Ethan will try to push you away immediately after my funeral. Don't argue with him. Don't demand explanations. Leave peacefully. The truth doesn't need shouting. It only needs time. I looked up at Harold. How could he know all this? Harold gave a sad smile. Because your father had been preparing for nearly 2 years. 2 years. Dad hadn't just written a will. He had planned something much bigger. I continued reading. By now, Ethan probably believes the company belongs to him. Let him believe it. Pride often blinds people faster than greed. I turned the page. The final paragraph was underlined. Claire, tomorrow morning at exactly 9 o'clock. Come to Harold's office. Come alone. Bring this letter. Trust no one. Everything you believe about our family is about to change. Love always. Dad. The letter ended there. I stared at the signature for several seconds, then folded it carefully. Harold spoke quietly. There's more. My head snapped up. More. He nodded. A lot more. But your father insisted everything be revealed in the proper order. What happens tomorrow? Harold hesitated. I can't tell you. Not yet. He was very specific. I laughed softly through my tears. Even now, he's still giving instructions. Harold smiled. Thomas Bennett never left anything to chance. Just then, the front door opened. Ethan stepped outside. He immediately noticed Harold standing beside my car. His expression changed. He walked quickly toward us. Harold, there you are. I've been waiting. Harold turned calmly. Good afternoon, Ethan. Ethan smiled confidently. I assume we're finally ready to discuss the company. Harold closed his briefcase. No, not today. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Harold's voice remained perfectly calm. I have no business to discuss with you today. Ethan looked confused. My father owned the company. I'm his son. Harold nodded. I'm aware. Then let's go inside. Harold didn't move. I'm afraid I can't. Why not? Because your father's instructions require me to meet someone else first. Ethan glanced toward me, then back at Harold. What are you talking about? Harold answered without emotion. I'm talking about your father's final legal instructions. For the first time, I saw uncertainty on Ethan's face. What instructions? Harold simply smiled. You'll find out soon enough. Then he turned back toward me. I'll see you tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. He walked back to his car without another word. Ethan stood frozen as Harold drove away. My brother looked at me suspiciously. What did he give you? I slipped Dad's letter into my purse. Nothing important. His eyes narrowed. What was in the envelope? I remembered Dad's words. Don't fight them. So I simply smiled. I guess you'll find out. For the first time in years. Ethan had no answer. He watched me drive away with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't confidence. It wasn't arrogance. It was fear. And somehow, that frightened look told me one thing. My father wasn't finished protecting me. Not even after death. That night, I barely slept. Dad's handwritten letter sat on my bedside table, and I must have read it 20 times. Every sentence raised more questions than it answered. How had he known Ethan would throw me out? Why had he spent 2 years preparing for something? And most importantly, what exactly was waiting for me at Harold Whitmore's office? At 8:30 the next morning, I pulled into the parking lot outside Whitmore and Associates. The building was one of the oldest in town, a 3-story brick structure with polished brass doors and tall windows overlooking the courthouse square. Dad had brought me here once when I was 16. He had smiled and said, "A good lawyer doesn't just solve problems, Claire. He prevents them." Back then, I didn't understand what he meant. Now I was beginning to. Harold's assistant greeted me with a warm smile. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Whitmore is expecting you." She led me down a quiet hallway lined with framed certificates and photographs. One picture caught my attention. It showed my father standing beside Harold nearly 25 years earlier. Both of them were younger, both smiling. Underneath the frame was a small brass plaque. Thomas Bennett, client, friend, brother in spirit. My chest tightened. Dad had trusted Harold far more than I ever realized. Harold stood as I entered his office. He shook my hand warmly. "I'm glad you came." I almost didn't. "I know." He motioned toward a leather chair across from his desk. As soon as I sat down, he locked the office door. That immediately caught my attention. "Why lock it?" He took a slow breath. "Because what you're about to hear cannot leave this room until the proper time." He opened a large oak cabinet behind his desk. Inside were dozens of thick folders. Most carried company names. Some had court case numbers. But one folder stood alone. It was dark blue. Across the front, in gold lettering, were the words, "Bennett Family, Confidential." Harold placed it gently on the desk. "Your father personally assembled this file." It looked several inches thick. Years of documents. Years of secrets. He opened the folder. Inside lay another envelope. Again, Dad's handwriting. "Claire, read with Harold present." I slowly opened it. Inside was a single typed page. At the bottom, Dad had signed it in blue ink. "Claire, if you're reading this, Harold has already confirmed that your brother removed you from the family home. I'm sorry you had to experience that. Unfortunately, it was necessary. Necessary? I looked up in confusion. Harold nodded. Keep reading. For years, I watched your brother become increasingly greedy. At first, I believed maturity would change him. Instead, success made him impatient. Money made him reckless. Power made him dangerous. I swallowed hard. Dad had never spoken about Ethan that way while he was alive. Never. 3 years ago, I discovered Ethan had begun moving company money without authorization. My eyes widened. I looked toward Harold. Moving money? Harold quietly slid several bank statements across the desk. Each one contained highlighted transactions. Large transfers. Luxury purchases. Payments to companies I had never heard of. The first time we found irregularities, Harold explained, your father believed they were accounting errors. They weren't. I scanned the documents. Sports cars. Luxury vacations. Private club memberships. Jewelry. Nearly every expense had been billed to the company. Thousands became hundreds of thousands. Eventually, millions. I felt sick. Dad knew. Harold nodded. He knew almost everything. Then why didn't he fire Ethan? Harold leaned back. Because he wasn't gathering evidence against an employee. He was gathering evidence against his own son. Silence filled the room. Harold finally spoke again. Your father wanted absolute proof. He refused to accuse anyone without evidence. He pulled another folder from the cabinet. This one was even thicker. Every page contained printed emails, financial reports, security logs, photographs, signed contracts. It looked like the work of a criminal investigation. Did Dad hire investigators? Harold smiled slightly. He hired 3 private forensic accountants. They worked quietly for almost 2 years. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad had built an entire investigation without telling anyone. Not even me. Harold reached into the folder again. This is where things became worse. He placed another document in front of me. It was a property deed. The signatures looked normal. Until I noticed one detail. Dad's signature didn't match. Not exactly. The final letter was different. Almost forced. What is this? Harold answered immediately. A forgery. My heart skipped. A forged signature? He nodded. Ethan attempted to transfer ownership of one of your father's commercial warehouses. He believed your father would never notice. But he did. I stared at the paper. So Dad knew Ethan forged his signature? Within 48 hours. And he said nothing? Harold sighed. No. Instead, he started preparing. I remembered Dad's words in the hospital. They're going to make choices after I'm gone. Now they made sense. He already knew what Ethan was capable of. Harold handed me another letter. This one wasn't written to me. It was addressed to him. He pointed toward one paragraph. I read aloud. Harold, if Ethan attempts to seize control immediately after my death, allow him enough freedom to reveal his true intentions. Do not interfere too early. People reveal themselves best when they believe they've already won. I lowered the page. My father had predicted everything. Harold folded his hands. Claire, there's something else. What? He looked directly into my eyes. You believe your father owned one company? Yes. He actually owns 6. I blinked. What? The manufacturing company everyone knows about was only one piece. He opened another folder. Inside were incorporation documents, commercial real estate, investment partnerships, agricultural technology patents, distribution centers, shipping companies. Each business listed the same owner, Thomas Bennett. I stared in disbelief. I never knew. Neither did Ethan. Harold smiled. Your father believed privacy protected wealth better than publicity. He slid one final document toward me. This one was different. Across the top, in bold letters, it read, Bennett Family Trust. Below it, one line caught my attention. Primary trustee, Claire Elizabeth Bennett. I froze. No. Harold nodded. Yes. I don't understand. Your father appointed you. I've never managed a trust. You don't have to. The trustee controls the decisions. You'll have professional advisors. But legally, the final authority belongs to you. I leaned back in my chair, completely overwhelmed. So Ethan doesn't control any of this? Harold smiled for the first time. Not unless you approve it. At that exact moment, someone began pounding on the office door. Hard. Angry. Harold looked toward the entrance without surprise. He found us faster than I expected. The pounding grew louder. A familiar voice shouted from outside. Harold. I know she's in there. Ethan. Harold said calmly. My stomach tightened. Another loud bang echoed through the office. You can't hide company business from me. Harold slowly stood. He looked at me. Claire. Your father expected this too. He reached into the folder one last time, then placed a small silver key in my hand. What is this? A safe deposit box. Downtown First National Bank. Your father instructed me to give it to you only after today's meeting. What's inside? Harold smiled. I honestly don't know. He never told me. He sealed it himself. Outside, Ethan slammed the door again. I'm warning you. You open this door right now. Harold calmly adjusted his tie, then looked at me with complete confidence. I think it's time your brother learned something. What? He smiled. That not every door opens just because he demands it. For several seconds, Ethan continued pounding on Harold's office door. Open this door. I know she's in there. His voice echoed through the hallway. Harold didn't rush. He calmly picked up the phone on his desk. Angela. Yes, Mr. Whitmore? Please ask building security to escort Mr. Bennett outside. Right away. Harold hung up the phone as if nothing unusual had happened. I couldn't help smiling. You knew he'd come? Harold nodded. Your father knew. Within a minute, the shouting stopped. Footsteps faded down the hallway. Silence returned. Harold looked at me. Now, let's finish what your father started. He walked me to the underground parking garage. Before getting into his car, he handed me a folder. Everything inside belongs to you. I opened it. Inside were legal documents, copies of trust agreements, and one appointment slip. First National Bank. Safe deposit vault. 11:30 a.m. I looked at Harold. You really don't know what's inside? He smiled. I've been curious for 3 years. But Thomas insisted only you could open it. Half an hour later, we entered First National Bank. The branch manager greeted Harold immediately. Mr. Whitmore. We've been expecting Miss Bennett. That sentence surprised me. Expecting me? The manager nodded. Your father made arrangements years ago. He unlocked a heavy steel door leading to the underground vault. The room felt almost silent. Rows upon rows of secure deposit boxes covered every wall. The manager stopped in front of one marked 417 B. This is yours. He inserted one key. I inserted the silver key Harold had given me. Both locks clicked together. The drawer slowly slid open. Inside, there wasn't money. There weren't diamonds. Instead, there were 3 items. An old leather journal, a sealed envelope, and a small wooden box. My heart began racing. I carefully lifted the journal first. The cover was worn from years of use. Embossed across the front were simple words. Thomas Bennett. I opened the first page. Dad's handwriting filled every line. Harold looked surprised. I didn't know he kept a journal. Neither did I. The first pages described ordinary things. Company meetings, weekend fishing trips, conversations with employees. Then, the entries became different. Much different. March 12th. Today I caught Ethan moving money again. He looked me in the eyes and lied. That hurt more than the missing money. June 4th. Linda refuses to believe Ethan has changed. She says I'm being too hard on him. I wish she could see what I see. September 18th. Claire still believes her brother loves this family. I pray she never loses her kindness. Tears blurred my vision. Dad had carried all of this alone. He never wanted me to know. Harold quietly said, "There's another envelope." I picked it up. Across the front, Dad had written, "Open only after reading my journal." I broke the seal. Inside was another handwritten letter. "Claire, by now you've probably learned more about your brother than I ever wanted you to know. Please remember something. Greed rarely begins with money. It begins with entitlement." I continued reading. For years, Ethan believed everything I owned already belonged to him. He stopped earning trust because he assumed it was guaranteed. That's when I realized something. A family business cannot survive if leadership is inherited without character. Harold quietly nodded. That sentence changed everything. I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He smiled. "Keep reading." Which is why, 3 years ago, I quietly transferred every voting share of Bennett Industries into the Bennett Family Trust. The trustee is you. I stopped reading. "What?" Harold opened another folder. Inside was the official share registry. My name appeared over and over again. Claire Elizabeth Bennett. Voting rights, 100%. I stared at the pages. "I own the company?" Harold corrected me. "No, you control it. There is a difference." He explained carefully. "The trust legally owns the business. As trustee, you make every major decision. Ethan can't remove you. He cannot vote you. And he certainly can't sell anything." I couldn't believe it. While Ethan thought he had inherited everything, he actually controlled nothing. Then I remembered something. "What about the will?" Harold smiled. "We haven't even reached that part yet." The small wooden box remained unopened. It looked handmade, almost like something Grandpa would have built. Dad had written only one sentence underneath. "For when you finally understand." I carefully lifted the lid. Inside was an old pocket watch. The same silver watch Dad carried every single day. I smiled through tears. He had once told me, "One day this will belong to the person who values time more than money." Back then, I thought he was talking about punctuality. Now I understood. Under the watch rested another folded note. "Leadership isn't about owning the chair. It's about protecting everyone sitting around the table." I held the watch tightly. For the first time since Dad died, I felt like he was still guiding me. Just as we left the bank, my phone began ringing. "Mom." I hesitated before answering. "Hello." Her voice sounded panicked. "Claire, where are you?" "Why?" "Ethan is furious." I stayed calm. "What happened?" "He says Harold refused to give him company documents." I looked toward Harold. He smiled knowingly. Mom continued. "He thinks you're hiding something." I answered quietly. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm simply following Dad's instructions." She became silent. Finally, she whispered, "What instructions?" Before I could answer, someone grabbed the phone from her. "Ethan, listen carefully." His voice was filled with anger. "I don't know what game you're playing, but the board meeting is tomorrow morning. I'm announcing myself as CEO. You'd better stay out of my way." Then he hung up. I slowly lowered the phone. Harold asked, "What did he say?" I smiled for the first time in days. "He thinks he's becoming CEO tomorrow." Harold couldn't help laughing. "So, he's about to experience quite a surprise." The next morning, Bennett Industries headquarters buzzed with excitement. Employees gathered outside conference rooms. Rumors spread through every hallway. Everyone believed the company was officially passing to Ethan Bennett. No one knew the truth. As I stepped into the lobby, dozens of employees looked surprised. Many smiled warmly. Several hugged me. One elderly mechanic approached quietly. "Your dad always said you'd be back someday." I smiled. I guess he was right. Upstairs, the boardroom doors opened. Ethan walked in first, wearing Dad's favorite Navy suit, carrying himself as though the company already belonged to him. He stood at the head of the table, tapped his coffee cup. "Ladies and gentlemen, as most of you know, my father built an incredible company. I intend to continue his legacy." Several executives politely applauded. Then, The conference room doors opened again. Harold Whitmore walked inside, holding a thick leather folder. He looked directly at Ethan. "I'm afraid we can't begin just yet." Ethan frowned. "Why not?" Harold smiled. "Because the person authorized to chair this meeting hasn't taken her seat." Every eye in the room turned toward me as I quietly walked inside, and Ethan's confident smile slowly disappeared. The boardroom was completely silent. 24 executives sat around the long oak table. Most of them had worked with my father for more than 20 years. Some had watched Ethan grow up. Others remembered when I used to spend summer vacations helping Dad deliver payroll envelopes to the factory floor. No one spoke. Everyone looked from Ethan to me, then to Harold Whitmore. Harold calmly placed a thick leather folder on the table. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "before this meeting begins, I have been instructed to read Thomas Bennett's final corporate directive." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Harold, we don't have time for another speech. I'm the only heir. The company needs leadership today." Harold didn't even look at him. He simply opened the folder. "I'll begin." The room became so quiet that I could hear the ticking of the old wall clock. Harold adjusted his glasses. "This document was signed by Thomas Bennett 18 months ago. It has been witnessed, notarized, and legally registered." He paused. "Effective immediately upon my death. All executive authority transfers to the trustee of the Bennett Family Trust." Ethan smiled confidently. "Exactly. So let's move on." Harold slowly looked up. "The trustee is Claire Elizabeth Bennett." For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then whispers spread around the room. "What? Claire? Did he say Claire?" I stayed where I was. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I simply watched Ethan's face lose every bit of color. "That's impossible," Ethan shouted as he jumped to his feet. "There has to be some mistake." Harold calmly handed copies of the legal documents to every board member. "There is no mistake. The trust owns 100% of the voting shares. Miss Bennett serves as the sole trustee. The documents have already been verified by the court." Ethan slammed both hands onto the table. "My father would never do this. He spent his entire life preparing me." Harold answered quietly. "No. He spent his entire life hoping you would prepare yourself." The room fell silent again. Those words hit everyone, especially Ethan. One of the senior board members, Richard Coleman, slowly stood. Richard had worked beside Dad for almost 30 years. "If these documents are valid, then Claire becomes chairwoman immediately." Harold nodded. "They are valid." Richard looked toward me. "Congratulations." Several executives began nodding. Others smiled. Not because they disliked Ethan, because many of them had quietly witnessed his behavior for years. They finally understood why Dad had acted the way he did. Ethan pointed directly at me. "You planned this." I shook my head. "No. Dad did." "You manipulated him." "No. You forged those papers." Harold interrupted firmly. "That's enough. The documents have already been reviewed by 3 independent legal firms. If you'd like to challenge them, you're welcome to do so in court." For the first time in his life, Ethan had no control over the room. Then Harold reached for another envelope. "I have one final letter. It's addressed to the board of directors." He unfolded the page. Everyone listened. "To my friends, if you're hearing this letter, I'm no longer sitting at this table. First, thank you for helping me build something that fed hundreds of families. Second, some of you may question why Claire now leads this company. The answer is simple. Leadership is earned long before a title is given." Harold continued reading. "One child wanted the chair. The other wanted the responsibility. There is a difference. Watch carefully. The right leader will never need to announce they're in charge. Others will know." Several executives quietly wiped away tears. My father wasn't speaking about business anymore. He was speaking about character. The letter continued. "If Ethan ever reads this, son, I loved you every day of your life. Nothing changes that. But love without accountability destroys families. I prayed you would change. I waited. I forgave. Again and again. Eventually, I had to protect the people depending on this company. Ethan slowly sat back down, his head lowered. For the first time, I saw guilt replacing anger. Harold folded the letter. The meeting is now officially under the authority of Chairwoman Claire Bennett. Every eye turned toward me. I slowly stood. My hands trembled slightly. Not because I was nervous. Because this wasn't the moment I had ever wanted. I would have given anything to have my father sitting in that chair instead. I took a deep breath. My father built this company by treating people with respect. I intend to do exactly the same. I looked around the room. No layoffs. Several executives exchanged surprised looks. No panic. No revenge. We continue operating exactly as Dad would have wanted. Richard smiled proudly. I second that. Another executive nodded. So do I. Within seconds, everyone agreed. Except Ethan. After the meeting ended, employees gathered outside the conference room. Word spread quickly. The owner wasn't Ethan. It was me. One by one, people shook my hand. Not because I had inherited a company. Because they trusted my father. And they believed his decision. As everyone left, Ethan remained sitting alone inside the boardroom. I quietly walked back inside. He didn't look at me. After nearly a minute, he finally spoke. You knew? No. I found out yesterday. He laughed bitterly. I spent years believing Dad didn't trust me. I answered honestly. He wanted to. Ethan looked up. What? He wanted to trust you. But you kept giving him reasons not to. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered. I really thought the company was mine. I nodded. I know. He looked around the empty boardroom. I lost everything. I quietly answered. No. You lost control. There's a difference. He looked confused. I reached into my bag, pulled out Dad's pocket watch, then placed it gently on the table. Dad wanted you to have this someday. He just wanted you to earn it. Ethan stared at the watch. His eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, I said softly. But you're still his son. That afternoon, I drove to my mother's house. The same house I had been thrown out of 4 days earlier. This time, Mom opened the door before I knocked. She looked exhausted. She had obviously been crying. I heard. She whispered. I know. She stepped aside. Please come in. The cardboard box containing my childhood belongings still sat near the front door, exactly where Ethan had left it. Mom looked at it, then at me. I'm ashamed. I didn't answer. She slowly picked up the box herself. I'm sorry. 3 simple words. Words I had waited years to hear. I thought protecting Ethan meant loving him. She said through tears. I didn't realize. I was hurting both of you. I hugged her. Not because everything was suddenly fixed, but because healing has to begin somewhere. A month later, the forensic audit Dad had secretly ordered was finally completed. The results shocked everyone. More than $3 million had been wasted through Ethan's reckless decisions. Luxury spending, bad investments, unauthorized bonuses. Fortunately, most of the company's core business remained healthy. The board approved my recovery plan. Within 6 months, profits were growing again. Employees received raises. The factory expanded. And for the first time in years, people smiled walking through the hallways. Ethan resigned from management. Not because I forced him, because he admitted he wasn't ready. Instead, he accepted a position on the factory floor. Starting from the beginning, Dad always believed honest work changed people. Maybe he was right. Every Sunday morning, I continued one tradition. I visited the same little diner where Dad and I used to eat breakfast. I ordered pancakes, black coffee, and always sat in the same booth beside the window. Sometimes, I imagined him sitting across from me, smiling, listening, proud. One rainy morning, Harold joined me. He placed one final envelope on the table. I almost forgot. Dad left one last letter. I smiled. There's another one? Harold laughed. Thomas Bennett loved writing letters. I opened it carefully. Inside, only one page. Claire, if you've reached this letter, then none of this was really about money. It was about protecting people. Businesses can be rebuilt. Houses can be repaired. Fortunes come and go. But once a family loses its values, everything else eventually disappears too. Don't spend your life proving people wrong. Spend it proving kindness was never weakness. Love, Dad. I folded the letter carefully, looked out the diner window. The rain had finally stopped. Sunlight slowly broke through the clouds. For the first time since Dad passed away, I smiled without sadness, because I finally understood something. My father hadn't left me a company. He hadn't left me money. He hadn't even left me power. He had left me something far more valuable, his trust. And no inheritance in the world could ever be worth more than that.